Joining. Perfect. Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for coming this evening. My name is Shona Okeke-Jakowski. I work in the public health team at Brent Council. And welcome to our second now breastfeeding webinar, tips, myths, and everything in between. You're very, very welcome. We hope you found getting here okay. As I just mentioned a minute ago, we'll be recording this session. So just to say again, if you do not want to be on camera, please do keep your cameras off, but you're very welcome to put your thoughts into the chat. Okay, so yes, welcome to our webinar. Just a little bit of background before we begin. So the council is working on a program called the Start for Life program, and it's a central government initiative. And essentially, the aim is for us all to share information with all of you, with parents across Brent, to make sure that you can breastfeed for as long as possible, to support you with your emotional well-being, and then also to provide some parenting support. So this webinar is one of the things we've been hoping to do for a while, to share information and tips and evidence-led information to support you to breastfeeding for as long as possible, and also to dispel some of those myths, because there are lots of myths out there around breastfeeding. And last, we want to share and celebrate your breastfeeding journey. It's certainly not an easy thing to do. And so well done for all of those. It doesn't matter how long you've been breastfeeding for. It's brilliant that you've chosen to. So this webinar is a space to celebrate that. And this actually, the Start for Life program as a whole is a program to celebrate your breastfeeding journey. And we want to support you for as much as possible. So before we begin and hear from our first speaker, just wanted to lay some ground rules to make sure that this is a safe space for everyone. So the first is to please be kind and respectful of using the chat. We want to hear all views. We want to get everyone involved. Yeah, we just want to make sure that we're respectful of people's views. Secondly, please do keep your microphone on mute. This will just help to make sure that those who are listening intently can hear everything. I've already mentioned about the webinar being recorded, but yes, please do turn your camera off if you would like to. And lastly, just say that everyone is on a different journey. So we want everyone to take part and share their experiences and maybe some things that works for you around breastfeeding. So use the chat function, but yeah, just remember that everyone is on a different journey. So just keep that in mind when you're sharing your tips and tricks. So enough from me. I'd like to introduce Anthea Tennant-Isles. Anthea is a breastfeeding peer supporter at the Breastfeeding Network. The Breastfeeding Network is a charity aiming to be kind of an independent source of support and information for people who are breastfeeding. And they're doing some really exciting work in Brent. And so we wanted to introduce Anthea to tell you all about that, but most importantly, to give you some really good facts about breastfeeding. So Anthea, welcome. How are you today?
Oh, thank you, Shona. Yeah, very well, thank you. Yeah,
good. The floor is yours.
Excited to be doing this the second time, actually, so feeling a bit more relaxed about it all compared to the first time. So yeah, as Shona says, I've just been asked to give a little bit of a talk on some tips and myths, so I'm going to cover a few of both, kind of tailoring it towards antenatal and also the early postnatal phase. I know there might be some of you here that are breastfeeding gone past that point, but there will be question and answers. So as we've said there and Stephen's posted, you can post your questions in the chat and there'll be time for that after I've sort of done my bit as well. But hopefully some useful tips as well around breastfeeding, however you're feeding your baby, actually. So yeah, so yeah, my first slide, if we can move on, please, to the next slide, Shona. So one thing that's sort of coming up more often now is seeing early birth, after the birth, seeing it as a fourth trimester. It's kind of drumming home that actually this is a period where the baby's still developing. It's a time when the birthing person's also sort of adjusting to the new life with a baby. So it can be helpful to see that as a kind of still this kind of almost pregnancy phase. You know, the baby's been fed 24/7 inside, and now it's time to adjust to the world. There's day, there's night, meeting all of those voices that it's heard as well. So yeah, just you might hear that term fourth trimester, and it's just drumming home that there's still this period of time where you're adjusting. So Skin to skin is a really top tip. However you're feeding your baby, it doesn't have to be breastfeeding, and it can last for however long in your parenting, that you want to do this. So for the newborn, there's physiological benefits. So it controls blood sugar levels and body temperature, which is a really big thing when the baby's first born. So that's why it is part of usual care to have skin to skin. But it's really important throughout. It can calm the baby, release oxytocin, so it can calm mother or breastfeeding parent as well.
Anthea, can I can see you on my screen, not the slide. Can everybody else see the slides?
I can see the slides. See?
I'm just checking that everyone else can see the slides. I can't see them.
Yeah, they're coming through.
Okay. Okay. Sorry about that.
The slides will be shared afterwards, won't they, Shona? So in case anyone is having problems, then I think they'll be faster.
Yeah, they will be.
So yeah, just remember the first milk, the first feed is called colostrum. It's very thick and yellow, and it's sometimes referred to as liquid gold. And that's really just to hone the point that how nutritious it is. It has lots of nutrition and also antibodies. So it's like a sort of inoculation. So that first feed's, if you can try anything and give baby that first feed, that would be amazing. And just generally, that skin to skin feeding, breastfeeding, it does release oxytocin, which does have emotional and physical benefits. So it's not all about baby, it's also all about mum and breastfeeding parent. And at BFN, it's really important we do give evidence-based information. So just a link there where you can get more information on all of that is for unicef.org.uk. They're a really good site for more research on loads of different elements of breastfeeding for mother, baby, mental health. Yeah. Thanks, Shona. So sort of what happens after that initial moment? The colostrum then starts to change to mature milk, which is kind of looks more like milk as we know it. And that period is around 2 to 5 days, and there's more hormonal changes, and it's often a really emotional time. Might start crying, not everybody, but it's just that knowing that actually that's normal. Many mothers are experiencing that. So yeah, that's something to look out for as well. The other thing to do your research is to look at how milk supply works. So you and your baby are a unique pair. So it's not always about finding out what baby is feeding for this length of time or how long they've slept. You and your baby are very different. You find your own way. But if you know how milk supply works, it's really important. So it's when baby's feeding at the breast, it's sending signals to your brain. Your brain is telling your body to produce more milk. So actually, when women think their breasts are empty, they're actually creating the signals to make more milk. And actually, when your breasts are full, you're sending the signals to stop making more milk. So just look into that. And if you want any more links, just send us a message. We can send you some, or pop into your local Brent infant feeding support group. All of these questions you can ask them or your midwife health visitor. And again, similarly, knowing about positioning and attachment. So how baby attaches to your breast. I should have my knitted breast, actually. As peer supporters usually have a doll knitted breast to demonstrate. But how baby attaches, how they access that milk, the ducts that are situated around that milk. Again, your midwife should be going through this with you and your health visitor, and pop into the local groups and online, of course. And yeah. So more tips is, when is baby ready to feed? And this can be really, really useful for parents to know. Look out for these feeding cues. There's these early feeding cues: stirring, mouth opening, turning head. If you weren't aware of that, you might not think actually that's when baby's starting to get hungry. You've got the mid feeding cues: stretching, that physical movement, hands going to mouth, tongues moving in and out. Yeah, you want to be that's the time to get baby onto the breast and do that positioning and attachment that you've learned about. And then you've got the late feeding cues: crying, agitated, turning red. I don't know if anyone's been there where they're trying to get baby to feed at this state and it's really, really difficult. So it's time to sort of calm baby at that point, cuddle, talk to them skin to skin, and then you're ready to kind of try to feed again and attach. More top tips. You can't overfeed a breastfed baby. And then you might have heard what is responsive feeding. So it's thinking about those feeding cues. And again, comes back to that, everyone having a different journey, you being a unique pair. So looking out for those feeding cues and feeding baby when your baby is ready for more feeding. You don't have to think, well, I've only just fed them half an hour ago, or, you know, I've only fed them 2 hours ago, surely they need feeding again. So just read the baby, and you can't overfeed. Is my baby getting enough milk? Well, what's going in should be coming out. So looking at the nappies, wet and dirty nappies, there's guidance on that in the early days. And then also later on, you know, you just know that it is going in, because that's a lot of things that people struggle with, of not being able to measure how much is going in. But actually you can by looking at the wet and dirty nappies. Oh, sorry, Panna, I've just seen in the chat, you have to leave. Again, the slides will be available, won't they? So the big top tip, don't suffer in silence. If it hurts, you can look back at that positioning and attaching, but ultimately, I think it might be the next point shown, do I say? Yeah, it's a new skill to learn. People always talk about it being natural, but actually we have to learn it. We learn how to walk, we learn how to talk. So find your support network, go to the groups, or other people you know who have breastfed. And yes, if it's hurting, then there's something more to be looked at. So yeah, just thinking about the chat box and getting that going. If you want to have a think about any myths that you've been told that you've since found out, you know, actually wasn't true and you got the right information, it can be really frustrating, but I don't think I've met anyone that this hasn't come across, where we've got the wrong end of a gist and done something that we would do differently next time. So the BFN did a sort of series of myth busting. So I've just picked out a few of those that I'm going to read through. So first myth, you need lots of equipment to feed to be properly prepared to breastfeed. Although you don't actually need any special equipment for breastfeeding, you may want to invest in a soft cup nursing bra for comfort when your breasts change after birth. So that's that milk coming in. Your breast might change at that point. And if you want to express, there's low-cost options such as hand expressing, which we can support you through. Yeah. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. You should be discreet when you are breastfeeding in a public place. So it's worth remembering as well that in the UK, you are legally allowed to feed your baby in public, where babies are allowed to be fed in public, or where babies are allowed to be. You can't ask to be covered up or leave or breastfeed in a toilet. But of course, we do acknowledge that many women and breastfeeding parents feel more comfortable covered up while feeding, doing that a bit more discreetly, but that is your choice to make. And remember, that is the reason we have breasts, and it's not something that we should have to hide. I know that's easier said than done sometimes. Next myth, you should avoid spicy food while breastfeeding. But it's important that breastfeeding mothers eat a varied and balanced diet to stay healthy and maintain their energy levels. It actually benefits your baby to be exposed to a variety of flavours early on. Babies will recognise familiar tastes from their mother's milk. We all know that having a baby in the early days, the last thing you want to do is have to be sort of worried about the food that you enjoy as that breastfeeding parent as well, or parents. So if your baby breastfeeds all the time, it's a sign that you should introduce solid foods before they are 6 months old. The NHS guidance recommends waiting till your baby is 6 months old before introducing solid foods. It's normal for your baby to feed more frequently at different times. This doesn't mean your milk isn't sustaining them. Breast milk changes with your baby's needs. And in fact, actually what we find is that once you start introducing solid foods, the baby starts to feed more regularly at the breast, because it's the milk that's actually got the high calories. So often we might start with vegetables or pureed vegetables or holding baby-led weaning style, but actually the calorie is coming from the milk. So the babies or toddlers sort of aware of what's happening. So they are adjusting their own supply in that way naturally. Yeah. There's something wrong if you don't love breastfeeding your baby. We hear a lot that breastfeeding comes naturally and that you'll instinctively know what to do, but in reality, it's a skill that can take time and practice, like we've mentioned before. So it can be hard for some parents, and most experience periods where they're finding it tough. We are here to help. So it is about remembering that coming to the breastfeeding groups is not always about coming along and being joyous about what's going on in your life or breastfeeding. We're all parents, and the infant feeding team are aware that there's lots going on. So yeah, just, you know, don't be afraid to reach out. And the last thing is just to say, because the Breastfeeding Network manage the National Breastfeeding Helpline, so the volunteers that are on there are peer supporters, so they're mums who are trained to offer breastfeeding support, like I am. And we've also got language lines, so there's support in Polish and Welsh, and there's also a dedicated line for languages Bengali and Sylheti. We'd love to expand that more, but I think that's it for me. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Anthea. This is the second time I've heard that presentation. I'm still picking out things that are just so fascinating to me. The one thing I wrote down that I really love is that you know, you and your baby are a unique pair. I think that's such an important point to think about, especially in the days of social media where, you know, lots of mums are rightly so talking about their, you know, parenting journeys, and you know, some people have very strong views about how they feed their baby, and you know that breastfeeding in itself can sometimes be a taboo, and there's lots of stigma around it. So yeah, I just love that, you know, you're a unique pair. You and your baby will figure out your own rhythm and your own pattern of doing things. That just, I feel like it would just relieve a lot of stress from parents who are feeding. That's a really nice sentence. I really like that.
Nice to sort of take the pressure off, I think, because
Yeah.
also it's such a big, you know, the birth and then the feeding after it, but actually
Definitely.
remembering that the parenting journey is so long actually, and that it
Yeah,
seems so huge at the moment, but actually there is
absolutely.
parenting as well. But yeah. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, you know, you and your baby are you know, meeting each other for the first time really, out in the world. And yeah, you're so right. You're managing your own well-being, you're managing the baby's well-being, you're feeding your baby, you're managing your relationships, you're managing your
Yeah.
changes in your body, and you have to feed them, you know,
Yeah.
it's a real journey, and people are at different stages. One thing I hope, while we just wait for some questions to come in, you know, please do either put your hands up if you're feeling brave, or you can ask a question in the chat. While we wait for those questions to come in, something I was thinking about was kind of that breastfeeding at different times of the day. Even now we're doing an evening session, and some babies might just be feeding right now before they go off to sleep. But I expect that feeding at nighttime, you know, 2, 3 a.m., just you and baby can be quite hard and quite tiring. What advice can you provide for parents who might be in that difficult time?
Well, that leads on actually to what I've just seen Amisha ask in the chat about dealing with cluster feeding. And she's saying it's quite exhausting. It certainly is. So that often, anecdotally, we know this, so you know that it often happens at around 10 o'clock at night, that cluster feeding. I don't know if you agree with that, Amisha. So, you know, it's the kind of that worst time really, isn't it? When you're all day and you're really tired and you know that they're going to be waking up at 2 in the morning again.
Yeah.
And you get this kind of non-stop feeding of the baby. And what we do know is that that's physiologically normal, and that actually it's not because your milk supplies and you haven't got enough to feed them. And they don't know exactly, but there's so much going on in the baby's development. And we know that there's a lot going on in the brain development with the neurons. There's lots of reading. I don't know all exactly, but you know, there's so much going on there. So, and that babies do experience that no matter how they're fed. But I think when you're breastfeeding, you automatically are thinking, well, they're, you know, I'm doing something wrong, or I haven't got enough. So that's one element, that's one feed of the day. And I think it comes back to that skin to skin, that talking, and just that the baby knows you're there. because actually they don't, it might not be that they're often feeding because actually that's that closeness and they're with you and they know they've got hold of you. So I think it's that skin to skin. And then referring to your question at the other times today, some women, breastfeeding parents, find that they really like feeding at night because actually there is no one around and they can quietly get up and have that time with their baby. So there is that sort of flip side too. But if you're not feeling that, there are some, I don't know whether you're into having your phone while you're feeding and whether you can, find something that calms you and interests in you as the breastfeeding parent while you are feeding during those times. But also breastfeeding is kind of designed, it's got the hormones to help breastfeeding mothers go back to sleep easily. So I don't know if we agree with that, but that's the kind of evidence. So yeah, the idea is you get back to sleep quicker. So I don't know if anyone on the chat here kind of feels that way.
It sounds like again, so many fascinating things in that like 30 seconds you've been talking is incredible. But it sounds like cluster feeding at some point the baby will move through that stage as they get older. And so it's not a forever phase.
No, and it's a really good point because it happens at certain developmental times. So often 6 weeks, I think it's 3 months, top of my head. Go and have a look. Actually, Kelly Mom is a really good website. It's evidence-based, KELLYMOM. And they do a sort of fussy evenings, but there's lots of other evidence-based websites to go through. But Mira's just put about meditation music or something you enjoy on headphones. So yeah, I think again it's that what's relaxes you and sort of trying to make that a positive time.
Yeah.
And it won't last forever. They do.
Renata, would you like to come in here?
Yes, actually, I'm just feeling sorry that this webinar is a very interesting webinar, and my all experience already passed behind. But if it is webinar could happen on summertime, what's your advice? Because there is always contradicting theme is going with while breastfeeding. To introduce the baby water in between breastfeeding and during the hot days, or not? What's your point of view?
Yeah, so the guidance and evidence is saying, you don't need to offer water to the baby if you're breastfeeding exclusively. I think the evidence they're saying you can offer some sips of water if your baby's on solids or formula feeding, then they can have water. But it comes down to that you can't overfeed a breastfed baby. So I would look at the NHS guidance on that, but it's no need to give water because they're getting that water from the breast milk as well.
Thank you, Renata, for that question, because actually I think it's one of those we're adults and I've got a glass of water right here, and I think there's something about those myths so thank you for Beth. I think that's a really, really great pertinent question.
What we should be reminding is for the breastfeeder to looking after themselves and hydrate. But we know in emergency situations that the baby will take what it needs. So you look after yourself as well.
That leads on really nicely to my next thoughts. Again, as we wait for questions to come through in the chat, I'd encourage you to please do put something in. Thank you, Mira, for your suggestion around meditation music. I think that's really, really helpful. Something, again, I was doing some research online before this, and I read that breastfeeding burns around 500 to 700 calories, which is incredible. So yes, I can imagine that, mums and breastfeeding parents on this call must be quite tired. So what can partners do to support those who are breastfeeding?
Yeah, and I'd love if everyone's here to give their ways that partners have supported, but I think it's around supporting that dyad, isn't it? That pair. So, if they can do the cooking and the cleaning, I'm not sure that's always what the partners want to do. But the kind of after feeding, that the sort of winding or just settling them, that cluster feeding time when you're like, look, actually, I fed and they're obviously got other things going on. Can you just do the skin to skin for a bit? they're crying, but just because they know the partner just as well, they know the voice. What else can they do, everyone? Bathing. I think that came up last time, actually. Someone said, you know, that's a nice bonding time. Changing nappies.
Yeah.
We've got a nice question in the chat there from HK Chung.
So, thank you for your question. What do you do during your pregnancy to be best prepared for breastfeeding? Again, another good question, especially because, you know, this, you know, pregnancy, I'm sure some of you might say it can feel quite a long time. Though 9 months doesn't feel like that much time, but you know, 9 months, a lot happens. And you start going to antenatal classes and meeting your health visitor. So yeah, I think pregnancy is a brilliant time to prepare. But Anthea and those in the chat, what would you recommend? Renata, from your experience, what would you recommend as kind of what you've done in the past to prepare for breastfeeding? Anthea, you start.
Yeah, what's the antenatal offer in Brent? I think the infant feeding team or midwifery will be having antenatals.
Yeah.
So I would suggest as well, if you can get to one of the infant feeding groups, that can really help, because you're at a point then that you can feel like you know who's there and you can feel comfortable about going again. And Jaysh's just put in the links to all the groups. So visit one of your local groups, meet some of the mums. Back to that point I was saying about if you can look into how milk supply works, so that you're kind of prepared with those feeding cues as well. So how does it work, that supply and demand kind of cycle? Knowing about the skin to skin and positioning and attachment. There's lots of videos out there. Global Health Media do some lovely videos, and lots of different women from different backgrounds. They're really nice. Global Health Media. So there's lots of videos showing babies how they attach just after birth as well. So that can be those are nice resources to look at. Yeah, if you'd like some links, we can send that later, I think, can't we?
Thank you, Anthea. Renata, did you want to come in here? Take you back to your own experience.
My advice would be not to compare yourself with other mothers. That would be the key point, and trust your journey. Patience will be the key, and loads of patience. But not to fall into those, you know, my journey been a long time ago, but not to fall into those forums, one-line advices. It's good to hear moms sharing journey, but don't fall 100% that it will be the same for you, because as Anthea is always mentioning and emphasizing, you are a unique pair with your child, so your journey is yours. It's good to listen, it's good to advise, but patience will be definitely the key, and lots of support, and not to be shy. Ask for help, for support if you need with baby time to relax, to try to avoid stress. Easy to say than to be done. Also, just another question popped into my head for Anthea. Cesarean babies, they need probably, there is going as well, I don't know, science-based evidence that when the baby is born via cesarean section, do they have less immune system, and breastfeeding is coming into as more advanced? That's place like this, that is really more important thing. I'm not saying that it's less important for natural way birth babies, but for cesarean babies, and that milk can delay slightly, and as well not to give up and to be patient and to ask for support on time. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think I'm not like complete, because I think midwifery probably best answer that. But what I do know is that you know, skin to skin is now mostly available to women, whether you have a C-section or vaginal birth. So that's really good, because I think that was a little bit missing before. So the skin to skin is important, because that's where the baby is. It kind of triggers a natural system for attaching to the breast. So I know that tends to happen no matter how you feed. The other thing could be that the position could be important. So often women hold babies sort of across where you've had the surgery. So there's something called the rugby ball hold, or underneath. So the baby's coming. But again, if you look at the attachment of a baby, it doesn't really matter how you hold them. They can go over the shoulder. you think you want to get certain things right, like a big wide open mouth and attaching to the breast. So those are kind of thoughts on that. But one thing that's come up recently, Renata, the evidence is around something called the microbiome, which I didn't go into too much because it's quite scientific and new. But if you're interested, read up about it. So it's about that good bacteria. And if you're breastfeeding at the breast, the baby is getting a lot of that good bacteria by drinking from the breast. And if you've had a C, and they also get that good bacteria from the vaginal birth. If you had a C-section, they won't have got this good bacteria, like this microbiome. But by breastfeeding and skin to skin, even if you're not breastfeeding, bringing the baby to your skin will help that. So that was another aspect. So I don't know if that answered your question, because I know you were saying about the milk coming in, but it might be best if we get that from the midwives.
Thank you so much, Anthea.
Anthea, can I just point out, it might be worthwhile pointing out there's some really good service links in the chat. We've been dropping links in the chat there. So there's good links to the infant feeding team and local services.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. I think that's what I was going to loop us back to. Is Renata made a really good point that don't compare yourselves to other people's journey. You've got to go on your own, and asking for help and support is completely fine, because as Anthea said, it's a brand new skill. So if you are pregnant, I know that this team, the CLCH Pregnancy Infant Feeding Support Team, they do antenatal clinics, if I remember correctly, every last Tuesday of the month. So hopefully there's still time in your breastfeeding journey to go and have an antenatal program. But if not, you can still email them and like Anthea said, book onto any of the clinics that they've got on currently now, Monday to Friday, lots of different times during the day. So yeah, someone there will be able to support you.
And I've just put a post on those global health media videos.
Thank you.
Someone asked about preparing during pregnancy.
That is great. I had another question. Again, please do feel free to put some comments and questions in the chat. So you've mentioned that kind of, basically any amount of breast milk is good for the baby and good for their body and helps them to grow and keeps them connected and bonding and all that good stuff. But what are the tips for long-term breastfeeding? How do we keep going? How do breastfeeding parents keep the willingness, the needs, all that stuff? How do they keep going for as long as possible?
Really good question. I think it's very, when we talk about that 4th trimester, so we're talking another kind of 12 weeks. So each sort of 12 weeks, isn't it? So that's like a long time in itself, isn't it, to think about actually 12 weeks of breastfeeding. What an achievement, when you get that far.
Absolutely.
As well. But that is when you might have heard the term establishing breastfeeding. So kind of at a point, maybe 6 to 12 weeks, comes a point, and it all really does depend. It really does depend on each pair, but comes a point where it's almost, when you've established breastfeeding, is kind of when you and your baby know what you're doing. You're not having to think about it so much, because sometimes in the early days you have to really right, I'm preparing, I'm sitting here, I'm about to do this, how do I do it again, how do I hold baby? So it kind of gets to a point where you suddenly realize, oh, I'm just kind of doing this, I'm just picking baby up, putting him at the breast, or oh, I'm doing this outside now, I'm in a park and baby's crying and I can just do it. So I think when you get to that stage, can often be the stage where people are very tired and even thinking about, I can't do this anymore. But actually, what many women find is that just get past that stage, you suddenly realize that things get easier. Yes, you're still quite tired because they are waking up, but it just comes a lot easier, and you know that the alternative is that they still need milk, and that you'll be making up bottles anyway. So actually, why not carry on what I'm doing, because it's kind of easy now. Yeah. Did you find that, Renata, that kind of point where you thought, oh, it's happening?
Absolutely. For me, it was golden time, while I was breastfeeding. You don't have to care about sterilizing, preparing. Is it warm water enough? Is it too cold? It will scald, you know, fold the powder. Do I have powder enough, you know, and everything. You just go out and about, you know that food is always with you, always ready, always available. And this is just that time together, you know, it's like it's that bonding, that connection you can't compare with anything else. Yeah,
And
and
I
this,
think different babies have solid foods differently. I know some who are just, you know, they're practically on solid foods and not so much milk, or others that are basically their main diet is milk up to 2. So you know,
Yeah.
when you want to stop can also depend on when you feel like, you know, just when you're ready, really, for you.
Yeah.
And there's no right or wrong time, I think. But usually, I suppose, yeah, just being mindful that it changes from a kind of nutrition thing as well to immunity. So when you're
Okay.
feeding toddlers, you know, people might say, oh, they don't need that, they're eating, but actually you're still, whatever, anything you're exposed to, bacteria, like more harmful viruses and all, you're creating the antibodies and then you're passing that on through your breast milk. So there's always benefits, and plus bonding. So there's no, you know, there's no time where you should stop because they're too old, or vice versa. You know, you have to make that decision, I think, yourself. There
Yeah.
are some
There's no maximum.
questions. Jayshrie's put a question in.
Yeah.
What do I do if I want to return to work, ladies?
This can be a
Yeah.
very difficult time, isn't it? Thinking about going back to the working world, and you know, after this special time with your baby, and maybe like you've said, you kind of get over that hump and you find yourself in the routine of being able to go down to Sainsbury's and do your shopping, and also quickly breastfeed baby before you get back in the car or whatever it might be. You've gone out for a coffee with a friend, quick breastfeed and back home. So it's, yeah, that's a real shaky time potentially. What can you, I've done some reading
Go
ahead of
back to
this, but
work.
what would you recommend? Yeah.
Yeah, and again, it depends on how old baby is when you do have to go back to work, how often you have to go back to work. So some, you know, might realize that actually you don't need to express because are they on solid foods already, so they can have that until you get home. If it's earlier and the baby's still relying, then you can express your breast milk.
Yeah.
You can mix, you know, you can do both. You can, depending on if your breast milk supply has been established, it doesn't matter then at one point if you're missing a feed. In the early days, you know, when I was talking about feeding means signals to the brain to then feed, it gets to a point where you are producing milk even if you're feeding less regularly, you know. So it does all depend on age of baby, and what point you go back to work. So again, I'd get that support nearer the time. And I suppose one tip is not to, we get this on the National Breastfeeding Helpline quite a bit, but you know, the anxiety that returning to work can cause much earlier than the point that you're returning to work. So trying to think, I need to express milk, you express milk, you're feeding it to the baby, and often they're refusing it, and that's a real concern for parents. So try not to worry too early about returning to work, and enjoy that maternity leave that you do have.
I think I read online it's called when babies go on strike, feeding strike. Is that correct? When
Oh,
they
yes,
don't want
that's
to, they don't want to
yeah,
drink
that's
milk
another thing actually,
necessarily
when they
anymore.
stop feeding. Yeah, that would be interesting. And again, the National Breastfeeding Helpline or your groups are a good place to go and talk to.
Yeah.
But I'm
I think
conscious that we're talking a lot, and I'd be interested to know the people who are on the, you know, how old are they feeding at the moment, or is it antenatal, and how old are their babies if they're feeding, or when they started and stopped? If you're happy to share.
Yeah, that would be great to hear. It'd be great to hear. And again, I think just to plug the infant feeding team is there to also discuss all these things with if you have concerns or worries about returning to work and how to manage that. Something that's really important to note, I think, is that your employers are legally obligated to give you a space to express milk. So if obviously baby won't be with you at work, so if you are expressing, you know, your employer has to give you a an office, a spare room, whatever it might be for you to express that's not a toilet. Because I think that was in your presentation, and you wouldn't prepare your food in a toilet, so why should you express your baby's food in a bathroom? That's not acceptable. So that's something I think parents on the call should really keep in mind when they're thinking about returning to work.
And I guess that's the sort of research you could do in pregnancy or
definitely
after, is to actually ask your employer, what is, how is this going to work? What's available to me?
Yeah, definitely. I saw online that some people will run a trial with their childcare, or they'll run a trial with their childminder and kind of do, maybe half a day or a few hours expressing breast milk, having it kind of packaged and labeled and ready to go. And then the childcare provider then knows what to do when it's time for baby to feed. So it just relieves a bit of stress again when parents have to go back to work full time. Yeah, I thought that was a really good tip, actually. And I can see in the chat. Oh yeah, go on, Anthea, please.
It's just a lot of mums find that, they're, when you're the breastfeeder and you're expressing and then you're trying to give, the baby's quite clever. It's like, why do I want that? Like, you're here,
Yeah.
And actually somebody else offering it, that's a sort of tip. But those are all tips. Again, if you go to your groups or National Breastfeeding Helpline, you can get some useful tips on what worked for other people or what we know worked.
Another nice question in the chat there.
So J Street asks, if I breastfeed my baby for too long, will they become obese?
No, quite the opposite, because you can't overfeed a breastfed baby. So and actually there's evidence and studies that showing that babies are able to regulate their food intake because they're breastfeeding. That goes back to that point about responsive feeding on feed cues. So actually you're not overloading their stomach. Sometimes if you're giving formula, there's really good tips now on how to feed from formula or bottle feeding called paced method. So you're feeding a small amount at a time. It's kind of mimicking breastfeeding. So that's a useful tip actually if you're not breastfeeding, to look up paced feeding formula.
Is that PACED?
Paced? Yeah, because it's not sort of giving a, there's tummy sizes as well in lots of your NHS booklets, and how small the stomach is. It's the size of a marble, and it grows up to sort of ping pong ball. And then sometimes if you're giving formula in huge volumes, there's studies showing that there's a link with obesity and not regulating your intake.
And Mira, you're totally right. So Mira read online that breastfed babies actually have less risks of obesity even later in life, and you are 100% correct. That's something that we look at here in public health, and the science does say that breastfed babies are at less risk of obesity later in life. So that's just just another cool, amazing thing that breastfeeding does. We have our next speaker ready to join us, but I thought we'd just very, very quickly discuss this last point, if that's okay. I heard that breastfeeding lowers the mother's risk of getting breast cancer. Do you agree?
Yeah, again, the studies show that there's lower risk of breast and ovarian cancer for women. And I suppose it is important to note that it's a lower risk, doesn't mean that you can't get it, vice versa. Sure. But when you're comparing those groups, there's really strong evidence that is, compared to breastfeeding, there's an increased risk. So what we often refer to in BFN as well is that breastfeeding is the norm. So actually it's an increased risk rather than a sort of lower risk. But I suppose that's just a small point.
Thank you, Anthea. We will draw our Q&As formally here to a close, but if you do have questions you'd like to continue to ask, please put them in the chat, and we're preparing FAQs to go out with these webinars after the fact. So you'll have your question answered. So yeah, please do continue to put those in the chat as we continue to talk, and I'll introduce our next speaker. I think our the people listening have already had a little bit of an inkling because I accidentally rolled my mouse and went through like 20 slides. So Jessie, welcome.
Hello.
We have Jessie here from Anya Health, who's going to tell us about a new initiative that we're launching in the borough to support pregnancy, parenting, and breastfeeding. But I will let Jessie go ahead and tell you all about it. Jessie, over to you.
Thank you so much, Shona, and thank you so much, team and parents, for joining us today, and wishing you the best of luck with your journey. It's a fantastic journey, and really glad to see that you're interested in breastfeeding. As a mother myself, I've been on that journey. I've breastfed, and honestly, my biggest piece of advice is to take advantage of the amazing offerings that Brent has for you, both in person, on site, and our digital offering that we're going to go through today. So Brent has brought in for all parents, that's including expectant parents, current parents, co-partners, grandparents, any caregivers that are taking part in helping you raise your little one, a free 24/7 parenting, pregnancy, and baby feeding support on your phone. And this will extend from point of pregnancy all the way through those first 1001 days up until baby turns 2. So let's have an explore of the product today. So this app is developed by top parenting and breastfeeding experts. So all the people that you want on your side in your team to help support you on this journey. That includes the lactation consultants that you're speaking with today, midwives, nurses, health visitors, pharmacists, doula, tongue-tie practitioners, sleep experts, and many, many more. We are a NHS approved supplier. We are on the NHS accelerator list as one to watch, and an app that parents genuinely find useful to have. And let's head on over to the next slide. So what are some of the features that we recommend for you to have a look at in the app? First and foremost, those 3 a.m. worries. Please do come in, download the app, and ask Anya anytime. Anya's available for you 24/7, whether it's about breastfeeding, early parenting, thinking about what to pack in your hospital bag. Come in and ask Anya the question. She's available to answer for you. And she has multiple voices. If you're a fixer, she'll give you the fix. If you're someone who needs a virtual companion or a virtual hug, she's there for you. Okay, let's head on to the next one. Now, breastfeeding is a skill. If you're like me, I had very little support at home with breastfeeding. Unfortunately, we're 2 or 3 generations out from breastfeeding. No one in my family or circle has breastfed since the late 60s, but it was something that I really wanted to do. But where do I go and get that information from? How do I have a look at that information at home in the comfort of my home when baby arrives? Within the app, there's an option for having a look at interactive breastfeeding animations. And in there, you can explore the different positions which are available and understand more about different types of latch, tongue movement, and what that interaction looks like. Head on over to the next one. But there are times when AI and CGI and interactive animations just isn't enough. That's the time when you need to speak to a human expert. So within the app, when you download it, you get a choice. You can choose to either speak to Anya AI, or Anya AI will ask you, hey, do you need to speak to a specialist? And you can go straight in and have an instant conversation with a specialist. Or if you really aren't up for getting out the house and getting to some of the clinics, and it's one of those days where you need to be in your sweats and need to be home, I sound like I'm definitely talking from experience here, you can rest assured that within the app you can actually log in and join one of the drop-in sessions, and our team will be there to support you and help you with any questions you may have. We also have virtual parenting communities, which are tightly moderated by experts. These are safe spaces, small communities where you can go in and ask questions and get the support that you need. Okay. And the really thing that I absolutely love about the app is it is giving you the right information at the right time for your stage and age of baby and where you are in your journey. So when you are in trimester 1, trimester 2, trimester 3, we'll give you the information you need for that. If you are post and you're starting your breastfeeding journey, we'll surface the information that you need at that point in time. Okay. And I don't know how many of you have started an antenatal program. We have one in the app. The app's really awesome for the antenatal program. It's extremely diverse in the types of information that's available. You can watch videos, read articles, watch webinars as well. And there's some really nice tick list information of considerations for you to have a look at as you get prepared for your journey. That includes everything from looking at exercise through to morning sickness, antenatal preparation, understanding more about your appointments and your rights with regards to breastfeeding and your parenting journey. And so there's actually one more feature we haven't got on this list, which we released this week, which is the birth plan. So if anybody is at that point where they're thinking about what should my birth plan look like? How do I get started with the birth plan? When you download the app today, you'll notice in that antenatal program, there's a birth plan for you, which will give you guidance and support for setting up your birth plan. And you can download that and get it printed or sent to your email or sent to your partner. So let's talk about how do we get this app. So as I mentioned before, we head on over to the next slide, please. The app is absolutely free for you, for partner, for caregiver. All you need to do is you can scan the QR code now. We'll leave this on the screen for just a moment. And you can go in and you can download the app for free. To get that premium access, to get access to that, all you need to do is when you sign up, enter your Brent postcode. The system will then recognize, hey, you're a Brent parent, we need to upgrade you, and the app will automatically upgrade you and you will get free access to that app. And that means unlimited chat specialists, unlimited drop-ins, unlimited conversations, unlimited article information, all the way up until baby turns 2. What happens after 2 though? All we will do is we'll revert you back to our free version. Okay, and let's head on over to the last slide. Okay, and that's it from me. I hope to see you on the app. If you have any comments, questions, thoughts, please do feel to reach out and I will try to answer those as quickly as possible in the chat. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks so much, Jessie. I know that's a real whistle-stop tour of the app. Mira's just asked in the chat, is it possible to kind of pop in and out of the app? I assume maybe pop in and out of that conversation with AI or with the specialist or with the virtual communities.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're able to go in and have that conversation with AI. What will happen then is once that conversation, say you need to pop out or attend to baby, that conversation will go on pause, and there's an option within the AI which will save that conversation. So you'll be able to revert back to that conversation, or the next time you go into the AI, it will be in the screen. If, for example, you're asking questions about when baby arrives, suggestions around getting prepared for breastfeeding, but you're only 8 months pregnant, that conversation will be able for you to refer to.
Great. And Renata has also just asked if the app only comes in English.
So currently today, the app is available in English. You can put a Google Translate over the app if you wish. However, we are introducing new languages, including we're looking at currently Arabic, Bengali, Gujarati, Romanian, Polish. Those are all on the list. The difference with our app is we don't just surface a language or translate the language itself. We also hire in clinicians and specialists in those languages to attend those webinars and those drop-ins. So that will be coming soon.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Do we have Mira who would like to ask a question?
Hello. No, I just wanted for the future because I am like breastfeeding my baby and I have my laptop with me. She's not used to have a laptop. She is curious, and you can see from previous questions, like we have unfinished words, bold, like changed fonts and stuff, but that was just for the future.
Thank you, Mira. We are after, at the end of the presentation, there'll be an opportunity to give some feedback. So you are very welcome to give us all your feedback, because we do want to do more of these things. We would love to share more about the things that are available in the borough. So thank you for sharing that. I will go through.
Actually, do you have a question regarding the app?
Oh, you do? Yes, please go for it.
It was just a misunderstanding because I asked regarding the app, and someone responded that the app is only the support is only on, it is app based, it is not web based, which I totally understand the reason. It makes everything a lot easier to navigate, but at the same time, as a parent, you have additional apps to overtake your phone. So I think it would be more useful, at least for me, not to have a need to download the app, but have the support just logging in on the web without the need of downloading yet another app on our phones.
So you'd like to see like a web-based option?
That's
right.
Okay,
so I'll give you some information around that. As it stands today, correct, the app is available both in the Apple Store and the Android Store. You can download it to iPads, for example, as well, anywhere where you can find an app. We don't currently support the web-based version. As you can imagine, there's a number of reasons for that. We did do some research around how many parents would want to use it on the web. Currently, we don't have enough interest for us to support a web-based version and be able to launch that in a way where it's stable and safe for us to do. However, I think it's really important to add your voice to that, so I'll take that note away and I will add that to our feature suggestion list. I really enjoy the fact that you've identified that having those conversations with the specialist is available inside of the app, and absolutely understand there are lots of apps out there. I would say as a parent and both someone working with Anya, you will want to pick an app which is evidence-based, which offers you that 24/7 instant support in your pocket, anytime and any place. And currently, as it stands, being able to have an app to do that makes it more flexible. But being able to access specialists in future on a web-based version would be great. But I know also Brent offers multiple other options via the web to be able to contact, and I think they've got some information on here for that. But thank you so much for your feedback on that, and I will definitely add it to our list for future.
Thanks, Jessie, and thank you, Mira, for your question and really helpful challenge, actually. I appreciate that. So we're coming to the end of our webinar, so let's speed through the rest of what we've got to share with you. The first is, as we've said throughout this whole session, there are infant feeding clinics available Monday to Friday. So you'll have this presentation afterwards, but all the links will be in the FAQs that we'll send out to you, and they're also in the chat now. So book in and speak to someone. Anthea works for the Breastfeeding Network, and they are working to set up breastfeeding support groups. So there'll be support, peer support available very, very soon. Watch this space, and that'll be promoted as quickly as we can put it together. There are 8 family wellbeing centres across the borough, all in different parts of the borough, all providing lots of services that hopefully are helpful for you, to those at home, and not just around breastfeeding support and support for your baby, but also around your wellbeing, around things like baby massage and baby yoga, and just meeting other parents, ESOL classes, whatever it might be. There's so much available, so please check out that through the Brent Council website. And Home Start is also a new initiative that we've started. So again, that's peer-to-peer support around parents and their mental health and well-being. So please check that out. And lastly, excuse me, if you do need support while you're currently pregnant, make sure you do speak to your midwife, either at Northwick Park, Imperial, or wherever you choose to have your baby, because you can choose to give your birth anywhere. Speak to your midwife, who will be able to give you some more information. As Anthea mentioned, there is the national helpline, the Let's Leak helpline that you can also find out some more information from, and also the Brent Council website will include some information for newborns. Here is the code you can use to scan to find out more about family wellbeing centres. You can register, get involved, and get a whole list of what is available to families. Yeah, they're really brilliant. There are 8 across the borough, and they offer lots of things morning through to the evening. So please do get in touch with them. So we've come to the end of our webinar. I can't believe it's been an hour already. As part of this Start for Life process, we're doing a lot of talking to families and parents about their experience of breastfeeding. And it's really fascinating. And so as part of that work and getting insights from parents just like you, It's being used to shape the work we want to do forward, which is part of the reason why we have this webinar here today. And so we wanted to share a video that will be shared on our YouTube channel, and it's just the local voices of families who are talking about their breastfeeding experience. After I've played the video, you are very welcome to. I will close this meeting formally, but I just wanted to show you just a couple of minutes just to share what's happening in the borough.
I am exclusively breastfeeding my son, been lucky enough to be able to do so with a bit of help. I really wanted to do it because of so many benefits for breastfeeding, both to my son in terms of things like building his immunity, protecting him against different kind of infections, but also the bonding that it brings us both by being able to breastfeed.
With my first son, we stayed at the hospital when he was first born for about 1 week, 10 days, and I really wanted to breastfeed him, but I couldn't for some medical reasons. The amount of milk that he drank had to be monitored, so instead I had to give him a bottle. And then after that, he would not go back to breastfeeding at all. So that was the challenge that I faced, and I was very persistent. I wanted him to go back to breastfeeding. مع ابني الأول نحن بقينا بالمستشفى جمع 10 أيام من أول ما ولد، فاضطرينا أنه نعطيه أنينة بدل ما يرضع، فبطل يرجع ياخد صدري، فهيدا كان أصعب شي بالنسبة لي لأنه أنا كان بدي إياه يرضع.
I regularly have conversations with new mums about their breastfeeding journey, and one thing that comes up a lot is how much milk they're producing and if they have enough supply. Now, one thing I really want to reassure parents of is the body is amazing. The body produces what it needs for your baby. So key things that you can really do to support your supply is to feed on demand, bring your baby to the breast as much as possible, keep calm and relaxed, and make sure that you have everything you need for each breastfeed that you're doing, and seek that support if you do need that reassurance as well.
So if you are thinking about giving up, it's definitely important that you consult your midwife or health visitor and involving them into your experience as well.
Breastfeeding may be challenging for some parents. However, there's lots of things you can do to get breastfeeding right. First things is, before baby arrives, attend antenatal classes where you will get lots of information and support around breastfeeding. You can also start collecting your colostrum, that's the early breast milk, from 36 to 37 weeks. Speak to your midwife about it first before you start. Thirdly, once baby arrives, spend lots of time keeping your baby skin to skin, ensuring that you position and attach your baby correctly to the breast. And if breastfeeding is challenging for you, seek help from your midwife, your support worker in the community, and there's lots of children's centers that offers lots of feeding support. Please contact your midwives, your health visitors for extra support if required, but do not give up breastfeeding.
So there's that QR code again if you'd like to find out more about your local family wellbeing centre. I just wanted to say thank you to all of our speakers who have spoken today. Thank you for all of you for coming and for spending an hour with us. The slides will be shared after this meeting. Please do register at your local family wellbeing centre. And I think Jayshree is going to put the link to the survey if you'd like to take part and give us some feedback. That would be much, much appreciated. But in the meantime, thank you all so much for joining. This has been really, really lovely, and I hope it's been useful for you all.
Thank you, Shona. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.